So, at the time of recording this audio, the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade to the LA Kings has not happened yet. The last update that we had gotten as I am talking into this microphone is that Dubois and his party are indeed talking contract extension with the Kings. Now again, we don't know if this is actually going to happen by the time this video is uploaded. There might have been a 1-year deal signed, there might have been a 7-year deal signed. Who really knows? But what I wanted to talk about in this video was the Montreal Canadiens. We already made the video yesterday talking about how Dubois is going to the Kings pretty much, and how the Habs were not the victors here. But in this particular video, I wanted to go out there and explore what happened, why this didn't work out, and why Pierre-Luc Dubois might find himself as an LA King for the next few years, depending on how that extension process goes, of course, and not a Hab. To help us out, we're going to go over onto the Canadiens subreddit, because when there was the tweet made about how PLD is talking about an extension with the Kings, we had ourselves a really good comment discussion thread just talking about the different perspectives, what this means, how the Canadiens lost their edge in this entire battle. What I wanted to do was read a few comments from the users of our Habs and just kind of give my thoughts on these things too. So right away, you could kind of tell, oh, Pierre-Luc Dubois going to the Kings. This is posted onto the Canadiens subreddit. What are Canadiens fans going to say? The top comment from Sharks9 says this: the second that Pierre-Luc Dubois was willing to go to another team than just Montreal, that's when we lost all of our leverage. There's no chance we would give the pieces that Winnipeg would want either, since we're not in win-now mode. And that's really the biggest thing that I think it boils down to, that because Pierre-Luc Dubois was so focused on coming to Montreal, everybody thought that it was a foregone conclusion. The Habs had the power here, because they could say, all right, we know your guy wants to come here. Like, we have all the power. We're not going to give you what you want for Dubois. All of a sudden, things get flipped up on its head when Dubois is like, okay, well, let's try some other team. And what is other team going to go out there and do? The Kings, for example, are going to say, hey, Dubois has wanted to go to Montreal this entire time. We've got to give Winnipeg a package that they want in order to make this trade go through. Again, at the time of recording this audio, the trade package has not been finalized yet. This video is being pre-recorded after all, but because there is this understanding that existed that Dubois wanted Montreal, it forces other teams that aren't Montreal to step up and give a bigger package. And for the Habs, they could look at that in response and say, all right, well, LA is going to give all this stuff. They're giving picks and maybe a younger player and all this. We don't really want to do that. Like, we don't want to compete with some other team for a guy whom we thought we had all the leverage with this entire time. PLD's a good hockey player, but for what the Canadiens are right now, he isn't a necessity for their path and their short-term goals. If the Canadiens were in win-now mode, it would make a lot more sense for them to try to get a guy like Dubois, especially since he was so committed to the idea of playing with the Habs. But if he does end up playing with the Kings for the next few years, he signs, let's say, a long-term extension there after getting traded, then that's sort of where things went away. It's where Pierre-Luc Dubois was like, okay, what about other teams? We can do other teams. It doesn't have to just be Montreal. What about other teams? For the Winnipeg Jets, this is really good too, because they wouldn't have been trapped in forcing to trade PLD to only Montreal, thus losing out all their leverage in the process. They had the option to shop him around to other squads and say, hey, this other team is giving us this, we want this for Dubois, and there's a bidding war that ensues because of it. Let's head over onto another comment in this same Reddit thread. SportsGuy1223 says, this sucks, but it's understandable that Kent Hughes didn't want to pay the likely price. But still, it's been 2 years of hearing PLD only wants Montreal, and now he is off to LA. Go Habs Go 1999 replies saying, that's what I'm more confused about. I understand Hughes not trading for him, but for Dubois to sign an extension with the Kings? Quebecois using Montreal as leverage for his sake once again, I guess. And then you have a few other comments replying to this one saying that this isn't really a thing. It's not like he used the Montreal thing to gather the most leverage. It's more so that he did want to be a Hab, but it's not like he only wanted to be a Hab. There were other teams that he would have been okay with going to, and because he is not a UFA, he didn't have the luxury of choosing with 100% authority. He had sort of been at the mercy of the situation and the teams around him because he is an RFA. He's not a UFA, so it's a little bit different there. Here's another comment that I thought brings up a very good point. Longshanks123 says, if it's Velarde and Iafallo plus, which, again, at the time of recording this audio, I don't know, that's basically the equivalent of Doc and Anderson plus for PLD. It's too much, unfortunately. And this is sort of where people start to argue, all right, well, is that really too much? Would you rather have PLD or Doc and Anderson? And while some people would go out there and say they'd rather have Dubois because he is a 60-point guy, there are some other Canadiens fans here saying, hey, I'm not even convinced that PLD is better than Doc. And that's an entirely other discussion. We could get into that as the week goes on. Once Pierre-Luc Dubois actually does get traded, I guess we can talk about the third overall pick centers facing off against each other. Add in Jesperi, Kotkaniemi, and Galchenyuk into the mix, and all of a sudden it becomes very, very interesting. But that's sort of what I wanted to get here with this video, that we sort of saw everything fall apart when Pierre-Luc Dubois opened himself up to the idea of going to another team. Not necessarily that he didn't do that earlier on, it's just earlier in the media, all we heard was PLD Montreal, PLD Montreal, PLD Habs. We had some other rumors saying that, okay, some other teams might be interested. Like, we made that video a few weeks ago talking about Dubois and the potential links with, I believe it was like, the Rangers, the Avalanche, the Kings were in there, so there you go. It actually worked out that way. I think the Bruins are in there too. But once the door opened to the idea of Dubois going to another team other than Montreal, you could feel the grasp that they had on this situation start to fade away. That the Habs were not going to be the immediate destination here. Now, again, at the time of me recording this audio, there has been no trade, there has been no extension yet. If Dubois does sign a one-year deal at 6 a.m. my time tomorrow morning, when this video is going to be uploaded and I'm missing it, then okay, that's my bad. The guy takes himself to free agency status next year and maybe he comes to Montreal then. But if he does sign a long-term deal, which is what's being reported has been discussed, then the Montreal dream may be completely dead. Maybe not completely dead. Okay, if he signs a 7-year deal, there's a chance that he can come to Montreal in 2030, but I don't want to think that far ahead into the future. It's tough to do things like that when you're running a channel that makes videos every single day talking about hockey news. And so that is where things seemingly fell apart with Dubois and the Montreal Canadiens. How Kent Hughes did not want to pay the price that the Winnipeg Jets were asking. A price that we all thought the Habs had leverage on because they were the only team the client actually wanted to go to. But a price that has now been matched by other teams, and thus Kent Hughes feels it's not worth it to go out there and make the trade and sign the extension themselves. Who knows what happens in the next few hours here. We'll make some more videos as the updates come and go. But this video in particular was focusing strictly on Montreal, PLD, what happened and why did this not go down. If there's anything else you think we should add on to this conversation regarding the player, the team, and the lack of a trade, then let me know in the comments all your opinions about PLD and the Habs. What do you really think happened, and do you agree with these perspectives here? Do you think it was all about PLD and his desire to go elsewhere? Do you think it was about Kent Hughes not wanting to pay the price? Or do you think there might be some other things at play? Did Pierre-Luc Dubois use Montreal as a negotiating tactic for other teams? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.